Good evening, this is Spirit Journey, and today is December 26, 2017, and it's a quarter after 6 p.m. I want to talk to you about various topics, but they're all kind of meshing together, and it may not really make a lot of sense. It might be a little all over the place, but the common thread in everything that I'm going to talk about is that reality really isn't what you're raised to believe. That there's a lot to life that I haven't even scratched the surface. And it seems like as time goes on in this spirit journey that I'm going on, that what reality and what make-believe, maybe it's all the same thing. I say that, wow. Yeah, in this spirit journey that I'm on, I'm allowing myself, as I said, over the course of this year, that I'm allowing myself to really experience different things, to expose myself to different types of things that I wouldn't really normally be interested in. And I'm forcing myself, the more, like if you watch and do the same thing, you really won't grow and you get pretty much the same outcome. So by exposing yourself to more things or different types of people, you may open up doors. But when you do something like that, there's always a price to pay that you may not like what you see. And I feel kind of that way. But I feel once you crack open that door, there's really no returning back. Once you taste certain things, you cannot pretend that certain things don't exist. So, where do I begin with today's talk? Well, let me start with yesterday. I was watching a new YouTube channel. A channel that I've never seen before. And this individual, he talks about World War II. It seems like his expertise is on World War II. And he talked about the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler. And he mentioned about that Adolf Hitler may not have died in that bunker with his girlfriend, who, the day that he allegedly committed suicide with he and his new bride, that, he kills himself and his girlfriend. But this program, I guess it's more like a research. He's a researcher, and he was talking to guests who elaborate about that they were people who knew his whereabouts, but they were to keep hush hush. Like one thing that they said was they smuggled him out of the country on some U-boat. And then another speaker said, no, he was afraid of water. He was very phobic. He wouldn't last long in a sub of any type. That they flew him to, what was that? Norway. And then from Norway to the Americas, in South America. But what I found interesting, when I was a young girl, I remember around the time when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade that there were a lot of movies, not movies, there were documentaries about World War II and Adolf Hitler, and you pretty much indoctrinated that the Germans and, most of all the Nazis, the Third Reich, were an evil bunch of people, and that anybody associated with them are evil, and just to destroy them more. And then there were the Nuremberg trials, and some of the people who, the officers of the Third Reich, that many of them were killed. After the trial, they were found guilty of crimes against humanity, and I thought it was pretty much a closed chapter. I even remember it was in the fourth grade. Like, I was so indoctrinated about the evils behind the Third Reich, and I still think it's an evil institution. But I remember to the extent, see, I didn't really understand about race and ethnicity in those days, just labels. And so I thought, okay, all Germans are bad people. And I remember in the classroom, there was a new kid, and it was said that he was from Germany. Now, this was an all-black school, elementary school, and this fellow was jet black. He was a black fellow, American black, but I remember he was extremely dark-skinned. But when they said, "Oh, he's from Germany," so I said, "Oh, then he's German, and he's a bad person." I remember thinking this in my mind, So it's something how, here I didn't know about race. I just knew the label called Germans, or Germany, So I think some people would laugh about that, hearing that here's a black fellow, and might not thinking that he's a part of that, regime, So here, when you're taught certain things, people are taught labels and meaning behind those labels, but not necessarily the history behind those labels. And so, when you're young, you just take on what you're taught without analysis, and that definitely was me at that in the fourth grade. So I could kind of laugh about that now. But either way, with the whole subject about Germany and in particular the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler, that I see now that how more and more how things are interconnected. As David Icke says now, connecting the dots. And so with this talk, I want to try to connect some of the dots from based on some of the videos that I've been watching, and how things are interconnected, and this whole world system is all connected. So like with World War II, I thought it was a closed case. Adolf Hitler died in the bunker, and his girlfriend, and that's it. But now that you have researchers, and they're discussing how this man Adolf Hitler and other people from his regime escaped, and how they settled in South America. And again, my mentality, how I'm indoctrinated that South America, or what we call Latin America, that it's a certain type of people that live there. Someone of mixed ancestry, tan complexion, and the novelty of having someone of Northern European, phenotype seems like an oddity. So I remember some movie. It was called The Boys from Brazil, and I think The Boys of Brazil, I think that was about a cloning program or something that taking his DNA, Adolf Hitler's DNA, and creating clones of him. I think that's what that movie was about. And but I never took it seriously. And I noticed in Hollywood that they seem to almost glamorize about the Third Reich. It's like you can watch a film and you walk away either being indifferent, thinking that maybe they're evil, or thinking that, hey, this is a cool dude, you know? And I see Hollywood is, I feel at least, that Hollywood is romanticizing the whole lure of the Third Reich. But here, look at this now. I mean, someone even mentioned that yesterday's enemy is today's friend. And so that's what I see now, the trend now, that this Third Reich now is your friend. I mean, people race. I mean, if people had money to buy a Mercedes, Mercedes are a German company. And they're known for precision and quality, but it's always a positive attitude towards. So here, this particular nation committed crimes against humanity, but yet it seems like people are being taught that there's something that's good about them, something to aspire to have looks of like this, what they call the Aryan type. Even something like, even in the modeling industry, you have that, at least growing up, like in the 70s, 80s, to have models, female models, who are blonde and blue-eyed. And even people who are brunette bleach their hair, so if they don't, if they have blue eyes but they have dark hair, they bleach it, or lighten it in some degree. And the modeling agencies, at least in New York City, that they have a very strong Jewish component to it. And I thought that was odd, like if it's a major Jewish holiday, the modeling agencies are closed. And when I was growing up and found out about that, I thought that was odd. I thought the modeling industry was about white people, and in contrast to Jewish people. And I mean, because I think of them as a distinction, not necessarily the same group, but a different group. Yes, of course, you have many Jews who are Europeans or European Americans, but in contrast to those who are European of non-Jewish ancestry, that there's actually a distinction, at least I'm making here. But so I was surprised that the modeling industry, that it's a significant influence on the modeling industry, the agencies, at least, that they're closed on Jewish holidays. And I started thinking, I said, wow, so how come these modeling agencies, again, that modeling agency is only supplying a need, from the, what do you call it? The client. The client could be a perfume company, a clothes line. You know what I'm getting at? So it's what they're asking for. And then the agency supplies that type of model. But I saw that early, in the 1980s, early 1980s, it was a strong push for models with this so-called Aryan look, or definitely Caucasian. And so I said, well, if Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich was about Aryanism, and if Jewish people, at least in the New York area, have a strong influence on the modeling industry, then how come it's being promoted and they're supporting that, So I didn't understand, even back then, So I guess what I'm getting at now is, who's really the bad guy? Who is supporting the bad guy, the Third Reich and their ideology? I thought that the Jewish nation or even Israel would be against something like that. But I meant to say that I heard this one YouTuber talk about her experience when she lived in Israel, and this woman, is a natural blonde and she has blue eyes. I mean, she's not tall or anything like that, but she has that phenotype, and how the Jewish women there were fascinated looking at when she was a little girl, having very blonde hair and blue eyes, and that was considered a good trait. So again, I'm confused about if the Third Reich and the at least modern day Jewish people, whether are they really enemies or are they bedfellows? I'm very confused. Or is it what they call the Stockholm Syndrome, and how you have a person who's abused by someone and then they fall in love with their oppressor? It could be that too. I mean, I don't know. But I figure if modern day Israel, that I would think anything that remotely resembles the Third Reich, that they're going to make a fuss over it. And in Europe today, you cannot mention certain terms, certain things, because you can be arrested if you go against that. The Holocaust happened. You can get thrown in jail. So it's that serious about the stigma that war has created. And anything, if a resemblance of the snake's head rising up, they're going to cut it off immediately. But at the same token, this other component that's what I see, it being nurtured. So I can't figure that out. So here you have so many people who died under that regime, and an evil regime at that. But then again, with some of the YouTube videos I was watching yesterday on this Third Reich and the whereabouts of Adolf Hitler, that it's saying that he was protected and he was smuggled out the country, brought to South America, Argentina. And even before the war ended, I think they said in the 1930s in South America that they were building up a society down there in Argentina. They were like a miniature German world. All the buildings, I think they call it Bavaria, but German type or Germanic cities of Europe being replicated in South America, in Argentina. And I think Chile was involved too. I'm not sure about that, but either way. So this was going on before the war ended in the 1930s. And it seems like, based on what the interviewer was saying in this program I was watching yesterday, that it's like they knew ahead of time that he's going to lose. And I'm thinking now, again, I don't know, I'm not an expertise on anything, especially World War II, but I'm just going by my impression with what was discussed. It seems to me that they're projecting what outcome they want to have. The outcome is perhaps this new city. And you have a figure like Adolf Hitler who's doing what he's doing, and his cronies. But I think it's a cover story. I think what was going on is that you have people even above people like Adolf Hitler who are really controlling the strings of war. And it's like playing a game of chess. And they knew at one point they're going to let that king go and get his demise, They're going to sacrifice their pawns in this game called chess. But they have what do you call those trump cards. And so everybody's watching this arena in World War II in Europe, seeing everybody getting killed and all these technologies that are being developed. But they know they're going to let him go, something. And so meanwhile, while World War II is happening, South America was happening. And they're building this city. Then I heard also that there are underground cities that are being built. And I'm wondering, okay, you have all these people in these war camps, these modern day slaves, European slaves primarily. They're being starved to death. They're being being experimented on in all gruesome ways. All these laws that are being passed in Germany to oppress certain types of peoples and promoting certain types of belief systems about Aryanism, And so I'm thinking that while that was taking place, they're developing this new world that's being prepared for a new Germany. And it seemed like with the Third Reich, he had an architecture. And this architecture designed for Adolf Hitler, and Hitler also he studied architecture. And the two collaborate on how they wanted to build this new, like a capital. It was like a new capital. It was done with such precision. It was a miniature city, like a model. And it was big. It was on a big table. But it was done to such minute scale. And so a figure like Hitler, he's not going to go down gently into that night. Not at all. He had dreams and aspirations. And I would imagine that people who are backing him also have these dreams too, at least to some extent. And for him to just allegedly take a cyanide capsule and a bullet, I think that's the cover story. And then you even had the Russians, like the Russians were against Adolf Hitler. They were very extreme enemies of each other. And the Russians, when they got into the bunker that he allegedly committed suicide with his new wife, they found a skull. And they said, oh, well, this is him. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, the Russians are very intelligent people. They have scientists there. And you would have to examine, you have bodies all over that bunker. And you would have to do some type of DNA analysis. And it's found out that skull fragment was not even a male. And it was a female and was not the female that his new wife, but so much younger than that woman. So you have all this false evidence being presented. And for whatever reason, the Russian officials of that day, when they entered into that bunker and discovered the two bodies there, and for them to not do a DNA analysis, and then they allegedly took that evidence, it's hard to believe. So I'm thinking, so what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is you have nations all over the world, and on one level, they can seem like enemies, like the U.S. and Russia, or U.S. former Soviet Union, and how they want to war between each other. But then again, during World War II, they were the U.S. allies. So how could you have someone like I think over 50 million Russians died by the Germans and the Germans' allies. and then they're just going to let them go, or, this leader died, so, end of the chapter. I think even within the so-called enemy nations of the U.S., that they're all allies. So whether you're German, Russian, Japanese, Chinese, Italian, they all are playing the same game. But they might play different parts of that game and even sacrifice their own people. And I think with World War II, that it was a big cover story. Yes, those people died. Millions of people died and were tortured, and just a lot of brutalities. But I think that's just the cover story that they want you to focus on. And so you ask, well, what is the real story? I don't know what the real story is. But I would say maybe a fragment of that true story is about what's going on in South America. Why is everybody focusing on that part of Europe? And you have all this stuff happening in the Americas, in the US's hemisphere, and setting up shop down there. Why didn't the US get involved? They have what they call intelligence agencies. Intelligent agencies is just a nice way of saying spies. You have spies all over. And all the different spies, regardless of what country they're coming from, they share information with one another. So one level, they're going to say, oh, you're our enemy. But then I think what was going on is, okay, we want this intelligence / information, and in exchange, we'll give you something that you want. I know we're enemies, but, we can collaborate on this. You give us this, we give you that. So the U.S. turned a blind eye on what was going on in South America, which is in our hemisphere. And remember before with, I'm not going a little over the place, look what happened in the Caribbean with Grenada. They were building up in Grenada some Soviet, this airfield with, I think it was through Russian help, well, communist help from Russia. And the U.S. invaded Grenada. So why didn't the U.S. invade what was going on in South America? Doesn't make sense. So I'm getting at, if the Germans are such an enemy of humanity, why are their enterprise being promoted in the Americas? So again, it's the cover story, what was going on over there. They might have been building what they call underground cities. Now again, remember Hitler had this design, this capital that he wanted to form, this world capital. Maybe they were building up this capital in South America. Also, again, before the war ended in World War II, this South America was being influxed with people from that part of the world. It's a whole city, German-speaking city. Everything, the types of buildings, the culture, the food. It's like they're setting up a home for when the war's over in Europe. They could retreat, these Germans, and come to South America and live a life in splendor. And maybe Germany at that time, they want to do a revision. Sometimes you start to think that, they might be bombing a city. But They bomb in order to recreate. They're not in poverty, Germany. They're doing very well. So it's like, I'll bomb you, then you bomb me, and then you notice all this money comes into those countries. Europe wasn't in dire straits. No, it's really weird. If they were really considered the enemy of the state of the world, they would not have been able to rebuild. Look at Haiti. When Haiti resisted in the late 1800s, they're in poverty. They weren't permitted to get into enterprise. They were embargoed for 100 years. But was Germany embargoed? No. But they were allowed to leave. Their soldier, what do you call it? The SS of the Nazi Party were allowed to come to the U.S. in the Project Paperclips or the Majestic 12. The U.S. used their expertise, and they worked for the government. I was told that at least half of the people who work for NASA, our space program, were those former peoples who committed crimes against humanity running our space program. And then you have the other alphabet agencies that are also, like the CIA. I'm not sure with the FBI, but they're all bedfellows. But you notice they always seem, the people who get hired in those places, those type of agencies, they all kind of look a certain way. They don't look like me. Okay, they don't look like me. So why is that? Was Germany really our enemy? Or is that just another cover story to kind of cover up so that maybe Germany never really lost the war? They changed what it looked like. The history wanted you to believe that they had their demise and they had a trial and everything, but it just changed a shape. It's like you start something here, you don't have to stay there anymore. Sure, you can bomb it because you're not going to be there. Now you moved on to the second phase, the third phase. You're somewhere else. You don't really die. You go somewhere else and you continue the program. You know, like a program may not be completed in one generation. It might take several generations. Just because one phase ended doesn't mean that the program ended. That's my point here. One aspect ended, but another one began somewhere else. And it was already pre-planned. Okay, so now you have this surplus, this influx of Germans living in South America, and you may have what they call the underground city there. And it was also said that the program mentioned that you had people who actually saw Adolf Hitler living in South America. He was staying in this resort, and they were told to be quiet, not to, don't look at him and don't talk to him. If you try to engage or tell anybody, you'll get fired. So they kept quiet, but they may make innuendos when they had visitors. This one American guy who was investigating the history about Adolf Hitler. He heard some rumor that he was there, whatever, and someone made it, saying things like, that they know something, but they can't say. So what's going on? Why isn't Israel at that time? It was suggested that Hitler might have actually died in 1965, at least by 1965, that he might have, died at that point. And his girlfriend that he married was at least alive in 2012. So she lived a full life. So I'm starting to think, with all these experiments that was done in Germany and other parts of Europe, I understand that they have this thing called, cloning. And like with Hollywood, and like even the movie The Boys from Brazil that came out many years ago, I think in the 1970s or 1980s, and how, that they were making clones. And then even recent, I'm hearing that you have scientists and they're perfecting cloning. What if they really did clone his body? I mean, that man was so much in love with himself. I would imagine that they would clone him. I feel that people are worshiping him to this day. I've even heard of Russians worshiping the guy. They have neo-Nazi groups in Russia. So again, yesterday's enemy is today's hero. Even in Russia. I thought I was dumbfounded when I heard about that. So what's really going on? So what else I wanted to talk about here? So you have, again, in history, this World War II and the Nazi regime and the experiments and his desire to form this utopia for his race, and then their demise. And now, you have what they call the super soldiers. Now, the whole subject of super soldiers is a new one for me. And what I'm seeing with the super soldiers, that again, Hollywood is just, it's something with Hollywood. Like, one minute they seem like a real corrupt institution, but at the same time, they give information about topics such as the super soldiers and the secret space program. And I was watching yesterday also, I was watching a program called Universal Soldier, and I was recommended to watch the videos on that movie. It's a movie. I think they made 3 sequels of the movie. I was recommended to see the movie by another YouTuber who investigates the subject of super soldiers. And so I just wrote like a note down to remind myself to go and look up that movie. And I watched the movie yesterday and today. It was really, especially, I think it's the 3rd sequel called, what do you call it? Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning. I think it came out in 2012. Very, very grisly. But what really came out, I mean, what stood out in that movie, if you can bear to watch it, how it parallels to my introduction to what they call the super soldiers. The protagonist in that movie looks pretty much identical to someone who was in the super soldier program. He died last year. I forget his name. But the same look, same haircut. Again, this movie came out in 2012. And this individual who was supposedly an actual super soldier who died in 2016 around, what was that, July or August of last year. But yeah, the same build, the same haircut, the same color hair, the same build. They both had the same accent. And there's another guy that also looks like who's in jail. And it's like, this is getting too eerie. So here you have the movie about super soldiers and how they were being, he sees his clone, it looked like a clone. You just speculate, they were identical looking in this movie. So that was, I guess, his clone. And he has to destroy his clone because he went to try to destroy him and this girl. And he said, you, in essence, if you don't do that, you're going to be the same way, And so you got all these things. So you have also, okay, I mentioned the clones, and then he had an implant, and they had to dig out the implant from his body. Yeah, it's just too eerily similar. Reality and Hollywood, they mesh together. And it's by design. So Hollywood is really, I think, it gives you an indoctrination to something new. It makes you maybe be receptive to certain things that are coming out. And it's telling you what's going on. And it blew my mind. I mean, I never liked watching these type of war films, especially the what do you call science fiction. I was not into science fiction, any space, anything. But now that I'm learning that these things might actually be going on, it's spooky. By watching the film on the Universal Soldiers and that new YouTuber. What's it? His name is Bareilles. What's his name again? I'm trying to find his name. I think it's called Forum Bareilles. Something like that. Yeah, really interesting channel. Really interesting. I like his format, and he speaks clearly enough to understand him. And he interviews people. It's a radio, like a radio program on that's uploaded to YouTube. And I watched several of his videos. It was just by chance I found his video. Yeah, so far all his videos that I saw maybe 3 or 4 of his videos, and they all seem to discuss World War II and the people involved in that Third Reich, And I just start to wonder, people seem to know what's going on, but the main media, they don't really want you to know about it, and they're going to make you think that you have a screw loose. But you see how life happens, that initially you're considered odd, and then it comes out like JFK murder, or that if you said it was a conspiracy, you're mocked. But now it's common knowledge that all what happened there was cover up, and a government cover up. So it's just a matter of time. And with, at least I understand that Trump had passed, like that, something about disclosure about the space program. So yeah, things are being set up now, that if it is this a super soldier program, and that's also connected with the secret space program, they both go hand in hand, that what's happening up in space is all about war and turf and everything, and extraterrestrials that are allegedly influencing and doing deals with other nations. So That's what this is leading up to now, what I'm getting up to in this talk that I'm doing. So you have this alleged disclosure that's going to come about, regarding the space program. So eventually it would have to discuss about these soldiers, because who's manning these programs? Who are they doing? Who are they working with? It'll eventually come out, And there was something else about this now. There was something I just heard also yesterday, that President Trump had wrote what they call an executive order. Okay. It is, I'm just looking at my notes, I'm sorry. Okay, I just have to really paraphrase. Like, this new executive order is going to make that, let's say, it like crimes against humanity with regard to the human trafficking, the selling of people to do what they call sex slave, other types of slavery, things like that. And anyone who's involved in that type of activity, that's doing those things to people, that the government is going to confiscate their property, their resources, their money. The government's going to take it. And this was something, this order was done by Trump, President Trump. Now, isn't this something? So it's like, I really hope so, that it's going to clamp down. He's like covering his back. I guess President Trump is getting this, maybe he's getting this information about these, what we call the WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and the Pizzagate, the human trafficking. And as I said with the super soldiers, that these super soldiers are being, like, before they become super soldiers, they get them when they're children. They kidnap children, and they seem to like children from a particular ethnic group. What's that ethnic group? Germanic races, Scandinavians, those type of people, British people. They primarily kidnapping that type of genotype because they're supposed to be people of that those genetics are part of a particular extraterrestrial bloodline. They say people on this planet, we're all mixed with something, but that particular demographics are mixed with a particular group that's in power, that these space programs are involved with. And so they only want to use those type, because it's easier to program them in order to do what they want them to do, And so they're kidnapping these children and then putting them in what they call a 20 and back program. Okay, this is all new to me. And again, I don't know anyone who is in such program, and it sounds far-fetched. But I watch so many of these videos regarding this, and again, how the things are overlapping. So here in the beginning of this video, I mentioned about World War II. And who was involved in World War II but German people, and they're very closely related to the Scandinavian peoples as well. And how now you have the super soldiers who supposed to be a particular gene pool or ethnicity, heritage. And then you have the human trafficking to get these super soldiers, which involves kidnapping and the selling of people. See that? And then now you have Trump introducing the executive order that if you're involved in this or you're financing this, that under this executive order, he'll have the power to confiscate your property. You can't do anything without money. So that's his way of clamping down and ending that. I want it to end. It is my desire that all that perversion, the what do you call the Pizzagate, the pedophile gate, they said even with the skull and bonesmen, that they also have to go through rituals, and a lot of it is perversion, sexual perversion of men doing things with other men and indoctrinating them to do certain things, and then they blackmail them. They get them in a sexual position and then maybe videotape and then blackmail them. Say, hey, if you don't do what we want you to do, we're going to out you. We're going to have you arrested. That was an underage girl that we photographed you with, but they didn't say that they drugged the person and they put the girl down or the boy down, little boy down. It made it look like something was going on. See, they do that. And they said with Congress and the senators that's what's happening to them because of being blackmailed. And so Trump wants to stop this. And, you know, if these Congress people fess up and let it known who blackmailed them. He wants to find out who's doing the blackmailing. It is awful. See what I mean? Everything is overlapping each other. Everything's related to each other, even though on the surface it may not seem related at all. I'm really sad about all these things that here you grow up and you think that the world runs a particular way, or being jealous that somebody else has something that you think you want, but there's a price to pay for everything. You might think, oh, isn't that person, oh, they have that job, or they have that lifestyle, or they're in this, they live in this neighborhood, but you didn't see what's going on behind this thing, behind the scene. Life isn't happy for them either. And when I worked, when I was in the business world, I met people who were, they had important jobs. They were directors of a major financial institution. They had access to money. And they were miserable people, and they weren't nice. But you might think, wow, isn't it something to have that lifestyle? But when you see them, they're not nice people. I don't know. What's going to be interesting? This I've been watching them too. They with the British royal family, the Prince Harry, who just got engaged a couple of weeks ago, and he's engaged to an American girl of mixed black and white ancestry. It'll be really interesting to see that new dynamics. It's so many newities with regard to this new couple, It's new, but it's not new. That, Princess Diana's grandmother was an American woman, an heiress. And Princess Diana got an inheritance from her when she died, and she was able to purchase her home in Britain. So, it's not new about being involved with an American, but I think that the other component is the racial component. That is a big thing. But again, Princess Diana also was of mixed heritage, that 5 grandparents ago. This grandparent was from a woman from India. So, when you really look in history, that it's not really new, but it's just maybe rehashing itself. But it should be really interesting, and really interesting about what this new couple, are they going to follow along? Are they going to do certain cultural things that, once you're inside that family, but they allege certain practices that they do in this family. And Princess Diana didn't want to be a part of it. And I think that's also why she was ostracized. She didn't fit in. She culturally fit in, but certain things she didn't want to be a part of. And so it should be really interesting if the wedding goes with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, whether it's going to happen. So I hope she's aware. I hope she does her homework and studies the royal family and ask Prince Harry, hey, what is it really going to mean for me, and what do I really have to sacrifice, and what do I have to tolerate to be in this family, So, yeah, should be maybe forced to do certain rituals. Does she really want to do that? So I really hope for her safety. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but it's all related. Why people are watching? Because she is of a black ancestry, of course, a mixed ancestry, but that component, and how the British, the Anglo-Saxon race, the Germanic races, their similarities and their ideologies, and being of African ancestry, whether in part or whole, is contrasting to their ideology. It's an antithesis. So it should really be interesting how it's going to work out. Regardless how it goes with their union, I hope for her happiness, whatever will make the two happy, and I also, want her safety and a peace of mind. I don't want her to be forced to do certain things, to compromise her values, So I know this is a long video, but I felt like I needed it to be said. Again, I'm chronologizing all these things that I'm experiencing with these new videos. I feel that it all fits in, and it's something. It can mess with your head, all this stuff. What is reality? It's all the same. Reality, whether television or outside, that the worlds of those two are really one and the same. It's the same coin, different sides of the coin. And I pray for all of us. I want humanity to be safe. And I think, again, the other reason why I'm doing this video is that I'm concerned about our future. I'm concerned about our safety. And if they're going to have the disclosure and opening up the can of worms regarding the new executive order, the can is going to be shaken real firm, and it's going to cause a disruption before it's any healing take place, So I guess I'm afraid of that transitional period. The boat is gonna rock. So I just gotta hold on tight. I want us all to hold on tight. I just see so much pain, like, mention, where I live. It's so much. See, if all this kidnapping and stuff happening, is it happening within the Black community? Or like this 20 and back, they're kidnapping people, and they're kidnapping Black people. And then they could kidnap people and then just make it look like they just gone for 15 minutes, but they've gone for years. And They bring them back into time, and then they walk around like in a stupor. You look in some black neighborhoods, and look how some of them act. They act traumatized, the men and the women, and some of the children. That's why I'm doing this video also. And that's what my fear is. If they're doing these, they just mostly show white people being abducted into these programs. But I think some black people, something's happening in the black community. Whether you're black or Puerto Rican, it's all one and the same in my book. They're hurting people in these communities. Hurting. Acting crazy. They're acting more and more crazy here in New York City. And I'm wondering whether or not they're being affected by these programs, these implants, and using what they call scalar weaponry upon our demographics, or your demographics, whoever who's watching. Start observing people's behaviors, what they say, what they do, the music, what's being said, the television. What do you see? Start really observing what the theme is, the common theme, and how you can protect yourself. I say really, like I went to Central Park yesterday just to get some fresh air. Get out there. Get out there. Start getting that fresh air and stay away. I know I am on these computers and technologies and stuff, and I have to be careful too. But I also am sharing my story in hopes that it's touching somebody's heart out there, because you may be experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing, or maybe your family members. Start being aware. Start documenting if you can. Do blogs or vlogs just to get it documented. And then post out, hey, this is happening. Start noticing patterns. Okay? So that's all I'm going to talk about this evening. And I know, again, it's a lot. Again, this video, and others like it, it's really designed, let's say you're cleaning your house, or, you're doing your chores. You just have it on in the background, this video, and start, let it get into your mind slowly. It's not necessary to consume in one sitting. Just hear it out, and each one teach one. So you see something wrong, just keep a mental note, and talk to your loved ones, protect your loved ones. Because if I'm becoming aware, I'm sure you're being aware too. So, yeah, guys. So you take care and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and New Year's, okay? Play it safe, be safe, and be prayerful, what your faith system is, okay? Signing off. Bye-bye.